and making sure that everyone feels comfortable within that climate. Has anyone created a climate of respect previously with their adult learners, and how did you do so?
To remember their names.
Oh, good, yeah. So remembering names, that helps. I think the activities that we just did can help as well, because when you're identifying things that are important in terms of life experiences between each other, one of the things that I find is that people start to respect each other more because they know more about each other, right? And so that can help as well. And this also assists in terms of creating a collaborative mode, because when you like each other, you respect each other, and you feel more interested, then you're more willing to work together to solve common problems, to do the assignments, to do the activities, etc. That's quite all right, thank you. We're going a little late. If you need to leave, do not worry. Just remember to sign. Sign for being here, okay? Don't forget to sign. The next one is help learners to achieve self-direction and empowerment. This is something you always hear me talking about, right? Like, learners being able to write a list of a goal and how they're going to work towards that language learning goal. So that's one of the ways that we look for self-direction. Empowerment is, I think, fundamentally going back to the idea that we have to design and have activities that in every class that learners can complete successfully. Right? Because that gives them a sense of empower. I got it. I did it. This is great. And that helps with their motivation. Okay, capitalize on learners' experiences. We've talked a lot about that already in terms of like what you're doing with activities in the class, the topics, etc., etc. That helps to capitalize on their experiences. Anything else that you'd like to say about these two things that haven't been covered, you'd like to add before we move on?
Maybe negative experience. For example, negative learning experience. When an adult wasn't successful at learning and he's afraid of doing something else, something like that. You see, he's afraid of that. He doesn't want for this experience to repeat.
Right. So one of the things that we could do that was awesome, to actually work with adult learners on this is to talk about what happened and what are some strategies that they could now employ that maybe they didn't have previously as a language learner to make them a more effective learner so that doesn't happen again. Another thing that we mentioned, I think it was you, Victor, with the anxiety. Like, how do you work on the anxiety that you feel in the classroom? And talking to the adult learners about, look, this is not a competition between each other. This is a competition with yourself. And that's easy, in the mind, but hard to actually do in class when you're in the middle of an activity and you're like, how come that person always gets it? And I'm struggling, right? So just being aware of those feelings that come up for us as we are learners and being like, okay, I'm having one of those feelings. Let me not engage with this feeling and let me continue to try to do the work to the best of my possible abilities.
It just occurred to me, it might be a good idea to make them share their learning experience among themselves.
Sure.
I mean, the top students may share their successful techniques in learning English with their fellow students.
Absolutely.
And this may be very helpful to them.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I do with my students is every time I ask a question, or every time there's a possibility for me to ask the students, well, how did you understand that? Or how did you figure out that answer? I ask that because this allows the students to again express, oh, well, I figured out the answer to this question because all of the questions seem to be related to each other. So I didn't know this vocabulary word, but I figured it was similar to what the topic was previously because all the other questions are related. So trying to find ways to teach strategies directly and indirectly. 5 is foster participation and cooperation. Making sure, again, this goes back to having a respectful environment, right? And making sure that people feel comfortable and that you feel comfortable within whatever is happening.
And it might be a good idea to make effective use and make intensive use of pair work in class. Pair work is a very good boost, by the way.
I would do pair and group. Because
Group work,
sometimes
yes,
pair work can get old.
Yes.
Especially if you're like, okay, let's do pairs, and they're like, oh, again.
I mean,
Yeah.
let them slide down, you know?
Basically what you mean is diversify the different experiences that they have so it's not teacher-centered. I agree. So number 6, foster critical reflective thinking. So making sure that what we're having them do is actually using those skills, right? Critical thinking skills, because that's what makes it interesting. Have problem solution questions or like talk more about distilling or whatever it is that excites them, but that engages the higher order thinking skills that Bloom talks about in his taxonomy. Because that really engages the adult learner and helps them to stay motivated to be in the class. Reflective thinking, I think, is also important. While it is a part of critical thinking, reflective thinking is also them about their own language practice and what they've learned and what they haven't learned, and where there may be gaps. But also, I think that reflective thinking, not just about the gaps in their learning, but reflective thinking is what have they learned? What can they be proud of? Because as adults, when we look at something, we look at what we don't know, as opposed to what we do know. And that can be really upsetting. You know, if you're looking at all the vocabulary in the back of the book or all the grammar and you're like, oh, I may as well just give up now because there's no way I'm going to learn all of this. But with reflective thinking, the idea is that you're analyzing your own learning and you're analyzing what you know and what you feel successful at. So you see the body of knowledge that you have in the language. And you can do this through journals and many other things with the adult learners.